Over the last 60 episodes of this show, we talked about sales, we talked about scaling marketing, but the thing we've never talked about is when things go well, how do you scale the team? Who do you hire? So I've invited Thomas from a company called Hypernova, and that's actually what they do. So let's jump straight in. What's the major problem when I'm scaling?
The main issue I see almost everywhere is that when you're dealing with lots of people joining the team on a short amount of time, you need to change the way you communicate with them and setting the right expectations, going into dialogue, evaluating them, guiding them. That's a huge learning curve for founders to tackle.
I see with so many founders, they're really good at something, and then they hire some people, and then things really start going because they're running around, they're running, so much to do, but still they have to communicate. So what would be your advice?
To double check if you're capable of formulating what you expect clearly. So most of the people I work with, they have a vision and it's here in their head. Mm-hmm. And they think everybody understands the vision. But when you start working with lots of different kinds of people, it actually is a very big learning curve to transfer that vision to all those people and making sure they see themselves playing a role in that bigger picture. Mm-hmm. It really strikes me that every company where I walk into the room, they all have this crazy amount of expertise. It's all here.
Yeah.
And documentation doesn't exist. There are no handbooks or playbooks, and the way you learn how to work or behave in the company is simply by talking to people, and that's a very labor-intensive thing to do.
And at what moment should you start doing it?
I've learned from experience that once you're building a team from 10 to 20 people, it's already becoming a lot of work to communicate just verbally. So I would advise to start writing down best practices, things you expect from the minute you're approaching the 10.
You would write it down. So if I look into tools, what would you recommend?
Well, there's lots of stuff that you can use. People usually start with Google Docs, but it's actually not the best tool, because once you are starting to write multiple articles, it's really difficult to navigate between them. Mm-hmm. We use a tool, it's called Notion. It's a sort of online wiki. Very user-friendly, and it has a nice way of navigating through the content.
I've seen it in several scale-ups actually.
Yeah, so I think that's one big tip for the people who are watching. Check it out, Notion. It's a very user-friendly way of documenting the most important information.
And you would basically document so everybody can look for it, search for it.
Yeah, so what we always advise is what are the 5, 6, 7 things people really need to know at the first day they start working for your company. And it's from practical stuff like where do you need to be, policies regarding
vision, mission, that kind of stuff.
Also that kind of stuff, of course. But I assume if people start working at the company, they've already processed the mission and the vision. So I would really advise to go as practical as possible, because the moment people walk into the door to help you move your company forward, they want to do stuff. Yeah. So the handbook is actually a guide to get them up and running as soon as possible. Yeah. You could compare it with a customer success or a frequently asked questions initiative to your customers. I see lots of founders answering the same questions over and over and over again, while they can just document it in the handbook and free up a lot of time.
So handbook, pure towards communication strategy. How would you tackle this?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, and it brings me to this concept I call rhythm. In which rhythm do you work together? And I see lots of companies just trying to do their best, and the result is that everybody needs to perform at their best level every day, but it doesn't work like that. You have, of course, your peak performance, and then you need time to slow down and reflect as well. But there's a big difference between founders and employees. Founders are very, very motivated, very, very driven by their long-term vision. So it's a different energy. But when employees join your group, I think it's important to take a step back every few weeks, like every 6 or 12 weeks, and just reflect on what have we learned. I think today we all live in a world that is changing very fast. So even the fast-moving startups and scale-ups need to develop a rhythm that keeps the pace of learning and improving happening. When companies are growing from 20 to 50 people, the rhythm starts to slow down. more and more people join the team, there's lots of operational issues, tasks that needs to be done, and they get trapped in this operational storm, just making sure everything is done by the end of the day. And they stop reflecting and learning. And I think that's a major key thing to avoid.
So one of the things that I mean, I struggle with, and I've seen most founders also struggle with, is that it's so busy. So how do you make room to listen? And should you listen? And how much should you listen? Because sometimes you're just listening and thinking they're just spilling their guts over to you, and it's not being productive.
The challenge for most of founders in that kind of situation is that they think they know it all. And let me give you a simple example. In my previous company, I've hired 50 designers, and I all gave them the same exercise. This is a software interface that you need to redesign. Just do something and let's talk about your work. And it was actually a project we did. And I thought we've considered all options. Every designer did something different, and every time I was inspired. So never think you know it all.
If you have to give one final advice, or advices, what would it be?
Yeah, I think the most important thing if you want to scale your teams is look for people that really want to be in the team. I think you should deal with your employees the same way as you deal with your customers. Sell them a spot in your team every single day, and whatever you do, never ever allow someone to stay on board that doesn't really want to be there.
Thanks for coming to the show, and I catch you once I'm stuck in a company again with lots of people like you that must come in and help me.
Thank you very much for having me.